Welcome to the show, Hema. I am so excited you're here. And shout out to anyone who's listening to us on YouTube. She created this entire beautiful space. So I'm obsessed with you.
Thanks.
I love your career journey. I'm truly excited about this podcast. So I'm excited to jump into it.
Me too. And it's really funny to be
I'm
here.
sure.
Like when I did this podcast studio for Drew, I wasn't thinking in a year, because I think it's been a little over a year.
Yeah.
In a year, you'll be sitting here at this mic. It's kind of cool.
I love it. I love to take it over, and you guys did such a great job. So it's beautiful.
You.
Hopefully our house one day will look like this. We'll make it happen.
Call me, girl.
I know.
We'll make it happen.
I love it. Amazing. Well, I'm excited that you're here for so many reasons. I think both of us have really left that stable career and job to make that leap. And I think we don't talk enough about the nuances that go into that. So even before we started recording, we were chatting about all the things.
Yeah.
So this is something I think we're both passionate about. So I know this conversation is going to be amazing. But I want to start with something you actually posted today on Instagram that really resonates with me.
Yeah.
And you said that the world tells us that having a plan B is wise. It's a safety net, the fallback, the cushion. But here's a kicker. It divides your energy.
Yeah.
This makes me have all the feels because I agree with that. But tell me what plan B is for you and what you meant by that post.
So that is actually a quote from my business coach who we were talking about. But she sends a newsletter, and that particular sentence resonated with me because I think so many people think you can have a side hustle and then eventually one day it's going to take off, like you're going to dip your toe in and give it a try and then see what happens. That's not how this works. I think it's good to do that and just see if it's even something that you want to pursue. But at some point, there can be no plan B. You have to go all in.
Yeah.
You have to dive in, put all your energy, all your resources, your trust, your faith, your belief into this thing that you want to do. And there is no plan B. You can't have one foot in and one foot out forever. And that's kind of what I meant by that. It's you got to go all in at some point. It's never going to go anywhere if you don't.
Yeah. And I just want to underscore that you said at some point you need to go all in, right? Because I think, you still need to be thoughtful around maybe financially. So maybe you can share a little bit about your journey around, maybe the ins and outs of when you went in and kind of when you went back to maybe contracting.
Yeah. So when I took the leap into being a stylist, it was that one foot in, one foot out kind of thing. I moved to LA to do it, but I was still working remotely with my law firm on the East Coast. And so the time difference worked for me. I would do my legal work in the mornings and then go intern or, assist other stylists in the afternoons or on my day off. I kind of worked because it was remote, across the country, literally. And then after about, I think 8 months of doing that, it was starting to become a conflict because I was getting more and more styling jobs and less interested in being a lawyer.
Yeah.
So I was kind of just very unengaged with my law firm and things were starting to really rub me the wrong way. And so there came a point where I got into this argument with my boss at the time and we parted ways. And then I was like, okay, now or never, I'm going to be a stylist. And so at that point I was almost broke. I had some income coming in from being a stylist.
Yeah.
So it was a good time because it wasn't like I was working for free. I was making some money. So I felt like, okay, if I've spent the past 8 months proving that I can make an income in this new area, then I might as well just dive in and see what more I can do.
I love that.
With all my time.
Yeah. I love this because you kind of slowly build the confidence. And even for me, and I never thought I would do this, but I actually quit my job. I was working with my family business at the time, thinking that was going to be the main thing and all that stuff. And I was like, you know what? This is still not resonating. I've jumped around so many times. I started this podcast just because it was COVID. I had time. I was getting so inspired by these stories and people were listening. And I remember it gave me this little bit of confidence of, oh, if I spent my time fully on something, it could be anything. What could that even look like?
Yeah.
And that kind of gave me the confidence to just put it all aside and say, all right, family, friends, I'm going to just go all in and figure it out. And there's something about once you put both feet in, there's it's this shit's real.
It's better. It's not sink or swim.
Yes.
And you'll hustle harder. If you have that entrepreneur, I truly do believe that you're either born with the spark or not. Not everybody's made to be an entrepreneur.
And not everyone should be. I feel like people glamorize it.
It's not glamorous. We were talking about that too. We can get into that. It's not glamorous. My mom is very entrepreneurial and I grew up observing her. And I remember when I was young being like, I'm never doing that.
Yeah.
I am just going to work this corporate job and be stable and whatever. I never wanted to be an entrepreneur because to me, it looked very scattered and risky, if you look at me now, it's it was in me.
Yeah.
I couldn't not, at some point.
Totally. And I'm excited to jump into this because I think sometimes, similar to you, like when we're in that corporate world, sometimes we forget we even have that in us.
Yeah.
Like when I was a kid, I was very entrepreneurial. Then I lost it because I was just climbing up the corporate ranks, making more money, doing
and it's
my
not
thing.
Rewarded in a corporate system,
Yes.
that mentality.
Yes.
Even though they say you should be an entrepreneur within your organization, that's not really what they want. They want somebody who's going to play by the rules.
Totally.
And to be an entrepreneur, you can't. You have to be a person who's like willing to take risks.
Yes.
You know?
And I'm still unwinding all that.
Yeah.
Because like you don't get compensated to take risks.
Not
you
at
don't
all.
get compensated to feel super uncomfortable. Like every day I feel uncomfortable.
Every day.
It's wild. Yeah.
I don't think it ever goes away.
I know. It
unfortunately.
I know.
I think that if you become comfortable, you're not growing.
Yeah. It's
so
true.
I think we just have to live with it.
Totally. And, you know, anyone who's listening, like if you could work on that muscle now in any capacity, whether it's like going to dinner with new people you don't know or doing a new project at work that's outside of your scope, like building that muscle is only going to benefit you.
Yeah.
But I would love to rewind back a little bit and talk about your upbringing.
Yeah.
So I know your parents got divorced when you were young.
Mm-hmm.
And one thing that they've said, and funny because both my parents told me this too, is never, you know, depend on a man to support you.
Mm-hmm.
So how do you think like that divorce or the words have really shaped your view about money and or career?
I still say that all the time. I have 3 daughters and it's not a man specifically, it's just anyone else.
Sure.
You know, I think we've expanded the narrative now. Like it's no longer about gender roles, but I've seen enough to know that like everybody should be able to stand on their own 2 feet financially.
Yeah.
In my marriage, that's what keeps it healthy. We've been married like 17 years now.
Wow.
And so we've each maintained a level of independence within our marriage. And it keeps it, for us, it works. It keeps it like exciting and fresh and like also gives us this sense of stability. Like, okay, when I decided to be an entrepreneur, my husband had to sort of like step in and vice versa. He also used to work in the family business and then decided he didn't want to. And so he started, you know, in a new thing. And at that time I was an attorney and I picked up the gap there financially. And so I think it's healthy to be able to stand on your own. And I still stand by that. Mm-hmm. I think it's important.
And it drives you. Like sometimes I'm like, where does this motivation and drive come from? And it's very empowering to be able to, you know, create wealth for yourself, make money, you know, you have financial freedom to do what you want. Like, and it gives you a sense of confidence, which I love.
And I want to set that example for my girls and like everybody, like women out there too, you know, you can be a mom, you can be an entrepreneur, you can have this great career, you can be a great partner. Yeah. It requires support. You can't do it on your own, but it's possible, you know. I think, and it builds your self-esteem to be able to accomplish things. I think it was either one of my parents or my uncles growing up said like, you can't give somebody self-esteem. Like they have to earn it, you know?
Yes.
It's just one thing I can't give my kids. No matter what. I can give them money, but I can never give them self-esteem. And then what if I'm not here anymore? What am I leaving? They can't fend for themselves. Like, so I do think it's important.
I love that. And I'm looking at you. Hema has 3 beautiful girls. And I'm like, oh, that is amazing. But to see you being an active mom in a happy marriage for 17 years, running your business, it's very inspiring. So thank you for, you know, being an example for so many of us and sharing your story.
I mean, it's not easy though. Like,
I know.
I don't want anybody, please, if you're listening or watching, it's hard work every day. Yeah. And it requires like a readjustment of everybody's priorities, including and expectations, including my daughters and my husband's. Like it's constant communication between all of us so that everybody understands like what I'm feeling, what we're doing, when I have time, when I don't. Like they've been, even the girls, they've been very supportive in their own way, you know? Yeah. Like if I have to travel or be at a thing or whatever, like we talk about it, I tell them and they get it. They know what I'm doing. Yeah. You know?
And the common theme I see just in so many of the women I've had on the podcast, even including you, and even now that I'm in this journey of entrepreneurship, is like having a supportive partner.
You have to.
Definitely helps. Or friends.
Or family or whoever. Exactly. A support system. Because my mom was a single mom and she was a career woman, but we had support. We had my aunts and uncles and like, you know, extended family and even like live-in nannies and things. Like you have to have some kind of support system, even if it's not your partner.
Yeah. No, it's so true. It's so true. So now I'm going to fast forward a little bit. Obviously, knowing who you are today, like you're such a creative. How in the world did you kind of go into law? And you kind of stayed there for a little bit. So what was the motivation for you to kind of go down that path?
I liked it. Well, my father's an attorney. And so like, I think maybe Persian culture is this way too, where you're like given these options. Yeah. There's 3 options of career that are good and respectable. And it's like doctor, You could be a lawyer, accountant, maybe engineer, 4.
Yeah.
And I liked being a lawyer in the beginning. I've always read a lot as a kid and written, and I liked the oral part of it. I was a litigator, so I'd be in court. And like, there were a lot of things I liked about it. Mostly I liked the salary. So that's, you know, why, I think that's why it didn't have longevity for me.
Sure.
But it wasn't like this big challenge either. Like, I think I was meant to do it because it was hard and difficult, but it also felt natural at the time.
Yeah.
You know, so I was led down this path and it felt okay. So I did it. But a few years in, something else started to kind of pull at me, you know, like when I was young, I was always into my room and my clothes and like,
really,
you know, even in college, I was that friend who everybody was like, what should I wear? You know, or like, can you do my makeup for me or whatever? I was just always that aesthetic person.
Yes.
But I was never told that it could be a career. I didn't know. I don't even think my parents knew to tell me that. You know, I grew up in Toronto. That's not a big, at the time, it wasn't a big industry there. It still isn't. Like, careers like that are largely based on geography. Careers exist here in LA and in New York that don't exist anywhere else. That's why I had to move here to do it. So I didn't even know. But looking back, like, the sparks were always there. I just didn't know it could be a job. So I almost wonder, like, if somebody had told me, hey, did you know you could be an interior designer when I was like 15, maybe I would have done this sooner. I don't know.
No, it's true. I mean, that's why this podcast is like so important to me. I want to like show different paths of what's possible, because similar to you, I had no idea until I was living in New York. I moved to LA and I was doing these dinners and I would see other entrepreneurs that were like me. And I was like, oh, like, I was still in finance. I'm like, oh, they're nice. They're normal. I was so used to men that I couldn't see what it would look like to run a business. And once I kind of met other women like me, I was like, oh, I can do it. And then, you know, a few years go by, I finally took the leap. But it's so true. Like, you don't know what you don't see. And so I'm curious, like, you said you were doing well as a lawyer. You know, you had the perfect life. Nice
I did.
car.
On paper, nice car, nice house, cute kids, cute neighborhood, the whole thing.
Yeah. And because you said, you know, you didn't even know what was possible outside of this realm. You created this amazing life for yourself. So when did you realize, like, okay, something is missing? Like, what was that moment in your life?
I don't know if it was a moment as much as like a gradual, like, it's almost like it was tapping and then it became a very loud, like, drive up to the building and feel sick every day feeling, you know? So at first it was like this inkling of like, this is boring. And then it became stronger and it was like, I don't like what I'm doing.
Yeah.
And then it became stronger and it was like, I really hate being here every day. And then I realized I couldn't connect with the kids when I got home sometimes because my brain was so like wrapped up in, you know, my work, but not in a good way. Like, it was making me into a person that I didn't want to be, like this person with no feelings, you know, like, to be a lawyer sometimes or a doctor, I think you have to kind of separate yourself from humanity to like mentally survive what you're seeing or hearing. So I found it difficult to let go of that every day when I went home. You know, it became harder to do that the more in it I got.
Yes.
So at that point, I was like, I don't like who I am, basically. Wow. You know? So that was so then I started like this little secret fashion blog.
Yeah. Oh, I did not know this.
Well, no one knows because it's secret. And so my husband, supportive person that he is, would like take my pictures in my outfit every day. And I'd put on these outfits. And like, that was when fashion blogging was becoming a thing, you know, like in the like 2010-ish era. And I didn't share it with anybody, but it felt like I was doing something. I didn't stick with it. And I was still too afraid to put myself out there. So then I was like, but everybody always wants my advice on things, so maybe I could be a stylist. And so that's where that came from.
Interesting. And so I'm curious, you know, your family, obviously being immigrant parents, like, they have their own fears. They want their kids to have stable lives. Like, I'm curious, when I was wanting to make the jump, my dad's like, are you crazy? Just stay with us. It's COVID, and put all his fears, as he should as a parent, right? So how did your parents kind of take the fact of when you finally got to the point of, oh, maybe I'm going to try this stylist thing? Like, were the people around you supportive?
Yes and no. I have a large family, and some were like, go ahead, girl, you can do anything. And then some were sort of like, I don't get what you're doing. Yeah. Like, this seems crazy. Like, I don't get it. You have everything successful. And my mom too. I think up to now, I don't think she fully understood what I was doing the whole time. Like, she would be like, you could still do fashion law. you know? And I'm like, that's like being a lawyer. It's not, you know, but at some point I do think that they may not understand what I'm doing, but definitely my mom and like my family, they believe in me as a person to like make good decisions and, you know, make a success out of whatever it is I want to pursue.
Yeah.
So they may not understand like what I'm actually pursuing, but they do believe in me as a human being. And that's kind of all you need.
Yeah.
No one's going to understand what you're doing. You have to like not care.
Yeah. Sometimes I don't even understand.
Yeah. Yeah, like you can't care about what your community or anyone else thinks of what you're doing. It can't matter. They're not your audience.
Yes.
Your family is not your audience.
You're right.
Ever. Even on social media, like whatever you're posting, whatever you're marketing, like they may double tap it to be supportive, but you're not selling to them. They're not buying from you.
It's
you
true.
know?
It's so funny because a memory just came up with you saying that. When I launched this podcast, and that was even before Bia, I was posting on LinkedIn, and you know, being in finance, like there's a lot of people I've worked with who I'm connected to on LinkedIn, and I remember being really embarrassed in the beginning of like,
embarrassed.
You know,
I was.
Yeah, like sharing stuff. And then it's funny, obviously now, you know, we're like a pretty well-known podcast, and fast forward 2-3 years, people I haven't talked to in years have been following the journey and are now sending messages, so proud of you. So it's interesting.
Same.
Yeah.
I've gotten screenshots from old friends like with the Arc Digest magazine, and they're like, oh my God, this is amazing. Like whatever, you know, and they have been following you the whole time.
Yeah.
And in fact, people will screenshot me like, I'm sharing this podcast with my other lawyer friends because this is like so inspiring. I'm like, oh God, did I cause like a lawyer uprising?
Totally. I'm getting like all bankers to quit and start. So they're like, how did you do it?
Exactly. So I think people are afraid for you at first, but like, again, you can't let those fears stop you from acting.
Exactly.
You know, they're really afraid for themselves. It's their own personal feeling.
Totally. Yeah. Totally. No, I love that. And what I think is so cool about your journey too, and I want to share this in case it inspires any woman who's listening, is that you did a career change later in your life.
Yeah, I was 30.
So you said like, my family and I had confidence that in whatever I would do, it'll do well because you've built that career for yourself.
Or even if it didn't, I would be okay because I would move on or figure something else out or whatever. Like they just see me as a person who can do things. Yeah. You know?
And you built that confidence over time.
Yeah.
So I actually think like if I started Bia 15 years ago, I don't know if it would be to the place it is now. Like it's like, so having those reps in whatever industry you're in will only benefit you when you decide to make the leap.
100%. It's not a pivot. It's like building on top of a foundation, right?
Totally.
I mean, it might be a different industry, but like being an interior designer now is like a literal combination of everything I've ever done. And I think that's why it's been successful for me in such a short period of time, is because all the puzzle pieces have been lined up over the past 15 years. So like people, I'm sure, look at me and they're like, how did she get in these magazines, like, or whatever it is, like so fast?
Yes.
But the reality is this came along, fell in my lap. I saw the opportunity for what it was. And then I took everything I knew and threw it at this, you know, and it worked.
Yes.
That's what it is.
And I have goosebumps because I truly believe in that. And I think, you know, it always works out at the end. And you're like, oh my gosh, my career in law, being a stylist, like it all makes sense.
Yeah.
What I think is important is like taking that leap and trying different things. Because if you don't put your foot out there, you're not going to look back and things like, it might not make sense at the time, but it eventually always does if you keep kind of going, which is what you did.
Like you have to do. I know a lot of people, close family and friends actually, who are like inspired to start businesses, and they sit there and they do the most at their computer. And I'm like, but are you out there doing?
Yes.
Because you're back here planning this business and launching this website and doing the social media and whatever, but like get out there and do, you know, like you have to put something out there for people to respond to and consume, physical, you know,
it's
not
true.
Unless your business is like Instagram, right? But like at some point you got to stop the planning and just act, you know. I didn't have any planning. I acted. And then I made a plan afterwards, you know, but I just took one step.
It's true.
Yeah.
Same actually. And it's funny. We just launched a product last week and it's been
like, congrats.
So, thank you.
Can't wait to get it.
Yeah. Well, I know when we're back in stock.
Yeah,
well, I'll definitely send you. Yeah. But it brought a lot of memories because obviously if we have one product that's out there and we're doing, and and my team is so excited about the new product and we're so excited. But in my head, I'm like, the game starts once we start selling.
That's it.
Like, it's not that it's easy. It's very fun to like get the website out and think about the photo shoot and like the
You're
branding.
creating a dream.
Yes.
What is that quote? It's like plans without action is just dreams.
Yeah.
Plans without actions are just dreams.
Yes.
You know, like you don't have a business, you have a dream.
Yes.
To have a business, you have to act and do.
Yeah.
And that's scary.
It's scary. But the thing is, like, once you put it out there, that's when you learn and you pivot. It's not like waiting for that one time. And I know in another interview you said, like, and this is how we're kind of trained in school, like in law school, like you graduate and you're an expert before you do something. And so many people even now, they're like, I need to be an expert before I go. Like that is conditioning that I just want to unwind. And for our future children, I'm like, I don't want you to think that way.
Even when you graduate law school, you know nothing about the business of law. Same with the design school, because I hire people now and they're out of design school. They have technical skills, but they don't know anything about customer service.
Yeah.
They don't know anything about how the business actually works, the practical realities of what you theoretically learned in school. You know, I think only med school takes 10 years because you're operating on dead bodies or something, you know, whatever they do. Yeah. But even then, a real life situation, you can only learn when you're in it.
Yeah.
And I think people, what you said is how I used to feel like, oh, somebody needs to give me permission to like succeed or go out there and call myself a stylist or a designer. But like, that's not true.
Yeah.
You know?
And it's interesting because I remember, you know, before I started BIA, it's like a very vulnerable spot before you put yourself and your face and everything out there. And I remember thinking to myself, I've been wanting to be an entrepreneur for like so many years. I've been waiting for this right time. And I'm like, I knew you can only learn by doing. And I was like, if BIA doesn't work out, at least I'm getting the reps.
And it's data. Like you're exactly, how could it not work out? Because you believe in the product, you believe in yourself, you see a gap. Like you've already educated yourself about what your offering is. And so you're just putting it out there. And the rest is just learning and data. Yeah. And so then you adjust, you know, like that's all it is. People really overthink it. Yeah. Like, oh, I'm sure your packaging, for example, has changed.
We had a typo for like 2 years. I was like, oh shit. Yeah.
Or like we just did a brand book. After 2 years, I'm like, oh yes, this is what my brand is.
Yes.
I had no idea. And then looking back on all the evidence, a brand emerged.
Totally.
You know, like because and a brand that is authentic and natural to me or my vision. How can you do that
when you don't have
when you're sitting at your computer and you don't know what's going to work?
It's true. It's true. Like people are like, I don't know what my marketing message is. I was like, we've been around for 2.5 years. We're still figuring that out. And that's through customer feedback. So to your point, like get any version out there. Don't spend so much money and just test it.
People are going to tell you. They're going to say, oh, like for us, like our new mission statement is part of it says we aim for richly layered livability. How would that came from other people telling me what they thought of my aesthetic. And I'm like, you know what? You're right. That is it. And that is genuine. Like that's what I try for.
Yes.
But how could I have distilled that down into a mission statement without actually putting work out there? Like, and then looking at it and being like, I would have done this differently next time or whatever, you know, like you have to develop that.
Yes. Yes. If anyone's listening, just get started, put it out there, like get feedback from people. It's vulnerable, but it's so worth it once you're on the other side. So 100%. So I'm going to go back, you know, you were a stylist. You basically made it as a stylist. Like you were working with celebrities, doing really well. But you still had this irking of like, this is just not for me. So tell me more about what that felt like, because I'm sure it must have maybe not been the easiest since you sacrificed so much. You moved your family to LA and you're like, oh shit, like this isn't for me. So what was going on at the time?
It was I learned very quickly that in fashion, like it's not the most equitable industry. There's a lot of things that happen within the industry that I don't like. So pretty early on, I kind of knew that it wasn't like being a stylist wasn't going to be like my long game. I would say within the first 2-3 years of really being in it, I was like, first of all, this is not scalable. Anything that requires physical manpower is very difficult to scale, you know, like, and that's all styling is, right? And so I didn't like that. There is a certain persona that succeeds in fashion, and I wasn't it. I thought that I could be in fashion and like be like dress how I want and do what I want. The reality is you're the help. That's how people see you. And everybody wears all black and everybody's a skinny white girl. And like, you know, there is a persona. And I was like, oh, I can't be myself. Or I didn't feel like I could be myself and move forward.
Sure.
You have to look the part. It's a very superficial industry. So a lot of these things, again, were not feeling true to me and like who I was. But like you said, I risked it all. And so I was going to do it. And so I played the part. I did it. Same when I was an attorney, I would put on the suits every day or whatever. I didn't love it, but like I committed.
Yeah.
And I was going to see it through. I was going to exhaust every avenue.
Yes.
You know, I wasn't going to sort of throw in the towel right away, because I knew that there are different avenues I could try with styling. Like I could do the celebrity thing. I could do movies, I could do TV, I could do advertising and commercials. And I did all of that. Like I tried every single thing except a feature film. I don't think I ever did that. But I tried costume design, you know, so I really tried to explore the entire realm of possibilities. And only after that did I then say, okay, I didn't pursue anything, but I also knew that like I had to figure something else out.
And even taking it a step back, I realized I didn't even ask, because I have a lot of friends who aren't in fashion and, you know, they want to dive into the industry. So you didn't have any network, you didn't have any connection.
None.
So how did you break in and have the opportunity to do all these different things that you mentioned?
So fashion, they'll hire, like, everyone works for free in the beginning.
Okay.
It's something you have to be willing to do. You have to work for free and start at the very bottom, unless you have a connection, which I didn't have. So I came to LA. There was this website called freefashioninternships.com.
I love it.
Yeah. And like everybody posts like internship on there, and it's all unpaid, but like you can apply. So that's what I did. And so I got hired with a stylist to be an intern.
Yeah.
I think my resume literally just said like, has a car and a law degree, and like, here's my availability, you know, because like they don't care about anything else.
Yeah.
So when you're like trying to break in, you kind of have to just show what you can bring to the table. And no one cared that I was a lawyer. That's not applicable to them. I couldn't come in with this like, well, I'm a lawyer. Like, you know, I'm smarter than everybody here, and like give me, you know, these plum jobs off the bat. No one cares. You can't do that. You have to really be humble and put your ego aside. And so that's what I did. I got yelled at for taping boxes incorrectly. Like all these things that you're like, at the time I was like, I have a mortgage and children and a law degree. Like, what am I doing? You know?
Yeah.
But no one cares. You have to humble yourself.
Yeah. And it's so interesting because I think about this a lot. I also, you know, I wasn't doing any free internships, but I've taken significant pay cuts since I left investment banking.
Yeah.
And, you know, I don't see people doing that too often, but it was the best thing I did because it allowed me, and it seems like even you, to create now this, you know, other kind of a wealth and business for yourself because you have all that
100%.
experience. So how did you feel comfortable, like you said, a mom of two at the time, a mortgage, like, to take that big leap? And also, I love that you put your ego aside, because I think that ego can kind of impact you. And when you start a business, it ain't glamorous. Like, you're packing boxes.
There's no ego allowed. You
and
can't have an ego.
Real fast.
Yeah, real fast. Like for the first year that I was even an interior designer, I was doing everything, all the ordering, all the receiving, like all the site visits, the whole thing. Like, and it's good because again, it's just learning, you know, it's understanding I've heard a lot of entrepreneurs say this, and CEOs, like, you should work in every aspect of your business in order to be like a better manager for when that day comes. Because how can I tell somebody how to do their job if I've never done it, you know? And so if you're going to start something new, you want to get into fashion or whatever, you do have to do that. I think you have to start from the bottom. And it can't be about a paycheck. You know, I don't advocate working for free. Obviously, that's a big problem in that industry specifically. And I think it's since been outlawed, although I'm sure people still do it. But the pay cut to me is necessary. How can you come into something new and expect your same pay for skills that aren't even applicable, half of them, you know?
Totally. And I think one gift, you know, that we both probably learned is the more money you make, it doesn't necessarily bring happiness. And I didn't know that. I was like,
I didn't either.
Like in my 20s, I was like, oh, great, I'm going to keep making money. I'm living in New York. I'm living in a high rise. Like, it was the best. But you hit a point where you're like, oh, this money thing is actually
trapping me.
It's trapping you, and it's fake. It's like, I grew up my whole life thinking money equals happiness. You hear from your parents, make money, be stable. And I was like, oh, once you hit a certain point, anything more if you're unhappy is just not worth it. So I think that maybe motivated you, and I know me, to be like,
it did.
F the money. Like, I want to learn and be happy with people I want to be around.
Yes. However, you do need money.
You do need money. No, it is important.
You
obviously
do need money, but you should not, like, money can't be the reason you decide to do something. It can't be the number one reason. That has no longevity in it. And if you end up in a situation where you spend the rest, like your entire life, just doing something for money, I don't think you're happy. I think that is sad. That's my personal opinion, you know? Or maybe, I don't know. I've heard people say this too, where they're like, whatever, my job doesn't define me and I just want to provide for my family. But guess what? That's making you happy. So then you're okay.
Yeah, sure.
You know?
Exactly.
Like maybe you're not driven by what you're doing. You're just like happy to be this provider. And I think that's okay too. But for me, it wasn't.
Yeah, I love that. And I love that you mentioned that, because some people are just happy for like a good job that they like. They make money. It might not be their passion, but they have so many passions outside of that. And that's actually a beautiful thing too, if it works for you.
I have wished to be that
I know, me too.
I have prayed. Like I've literally been like,
me too.
Why can't I just be okay with that?
I know. I say the same
I
thing.
can't. But this isn't condescending at all. Like I'm being serious. Like if you are that person who's literally like, I got my hobbies and I'm like, I'm fine with my job and it provides for my family and that's my priority, and that you are genuinely good with that. Yeah. I'm jealous.
Yeah.
You know,
truly.
The turmoil inside that I feel every day to create and build, it's not pleasant.
Yeah.
You know?
Yeah.
I don't know if you feel that way, but some days I'm just like, I'm tired.
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
I'm really tired.
Literally on Monday, I was like, I am. And like, it's funny because like shit will hit the fan all at once. Yeah. And it's manageable when it's went off. But like Monday was just like, wow. Yeah. This is a lot right now.
We've had a week like that too. And I am just like, but why? For what? You know, it's important to have your eye on the prize, like North Star, if you are an entrepreneur. And it can change, I guess. But like, I think that's the only thing that keeps you going sometimes.
Yeah. It's really like, it sounds so basic. And I used to hear this before I even had my own business, but like the why. The why is so important. Yeah. Like, and also like, how do you define happiness? Like if I was running Bia and you know, this podcast, it's a lot. The day I'm not happy, I will mix it up. So it's like, you think about what makes you happy. It doesn't have to be that business that everybody thinks you should start. If you're happy in your life right now, if you're happy with your kids, you're happy with your job, like that's the number one thing to optimize.
100%.
And I think about that a lot.
Yeah. I think people, especially because of social media and then the pandemic, everybody was like launching a business every other day from their living room. But like, let's be real. Everybody doesn't have to do that. Just because you see everybody doing that, if that doesn't resonate with you, don't do it. I mean, this is probably a podcast for entrepreneurs. So they're listening to this like whatever.
It's good to know when you shouldn't do it. Yeah. If I didn't have the conviction of supporting women's hormones because I went through my own journey, this shit would be 10 times harder. I would have quit. Yeah. No question about it. So you need to have that like the passion and truly the why. Yeah. And like the customers half the time I send screenshots of the emails we get and I'm like, this is what got me through Monday. Yeah. Like truly. And I'm sure you feel the same way.
It's the same. When I was a stylist, the big thing that kept me going for 7 years was like seeing that physical transformation when somebody feels good about themselves. That's what I love. I love bringing people's insides out because I think a lot of us walk around hiding. And one of the things that styling and interior design have in common is that it is my job to give you, Yasmin, or whichever client permission to be themselves on the outside. Yeah. Like
I love that.
Everyone's hiding. And it is my personal mission to bring us all out of hiding and like allow us all to be our authentic selves on the outside. And it's something that comes naturally to me once I get to know a person. And so that is what keeps me going. I do feel like there's room in the world for beauty in all different shapes and forms. And like, you're not living your most authentic life if you're hiding any aspect of yourself.
Oh, I love that so much.
Yeah, that's our brand. Listen,
that was really good.
We just distilled it down in a document. True. But it took me a couple of years to really do this business and understand like, that's what's driving me is giving people that same permission to be authentic that I give myself in my way.
Yep. You know? No, it's powerful. And so I'm curious, you know, you never thought about interior design. Never. I love the serendipitous aspect of how you even fell into it. So tell us about how you went from a stylist to then, you know, going down a completely different path.
So in the pandemic hit and I had a good roster of clients. Then nobody was going anywhere. And so I was just like, I was pregnant. I had a baby January 2020 and then the pandemic hit in March. Wow. And so I was on leave anyway. And I already knew I didn't really like styling, even though I had done everything I wanted to. Like good clients, good jobs, like, you know, good income, all of that. But it still wasn't resonating anymore. I just didn't know what to do. So I read this book, The Surrender Experiment, that I talk about a lot, that I think everybody should read. And I decided once the pandemic hit, I was going to do nothing because there was like nothing to do anyway. And then in 2021, when people started doing things again, my clients started coming back. And one of my clients, Deepika, was like, hey, I got a new apartment. Will you help me decorate it? And I was like, the book said surrender. So I was like, maybe this is something I should just do. Because I liked it. She's like, your house is cute. And I'm like, I've always liked decorating my own spaces, even my dorm room. Like it was always done, you know? It's very important to me because that's like my mental well-being. I don't like my house to feel unfinished or out of place. I'm not a neat freak, but it's something about it being an experience for me. Anyway, so I did the project and that's how it snowballed, because then more people were like, help me, help me, help me. Even Drew at the time.
Oh yeah, I saw it on Instagram. I was like, Drew, we need to hit her up because
exactly. And then it's just so happened we had like a personal connection, you know, but it just snowballed. And then I was like, by the end of 2021, I was doing both. I had one foot in styling. How ironic that styling became my like backup, because it was so unstable the whole time because it's freelance. And then I hesitated to let it go because I'm like, but I know what that is.
It's comfortable.
It's comfortable because I know that instability, you know? And then diving into interior design felt like an unknown. But by the end of the year, because I thought every job was going to be my last, you know? Like every time somebody asked me to help them with their house or their whatever, I was like, this is fun. Okay, no one's ever going to ask me to do that again. That was a fun project. And then it just kept happening.
Interesting.
So then by the end of the year, I was like, what if I just did this? Like, what if I actually started marketing? And what if I actually started treating this like the business that it seems to want to be? So,
well, it's so interesting because two things that stand out about your journey is I love the Surrender Experiment. Michael Singer, he's amazing. Like even listening to his stuff on YouTube, I think I've read that book 3 times in my journey from like even finance days. It's really, really good.
You know how I discovered it? I applied for a legal job at the end of in the pandemic because I was so fresh. At end of 2020, I thought I was never going to be a stylist again. And I was like, well, I should go back to the devil that I know, which is law. At least I'll make a ton of money and like whatever. And then the HR recruiter who didn't hire me was like, you should read this book.
Interesting that she told you that.
She's like, I read it too and it really helped me. And I'm like, okay, girl, thanks.
Yeah.
You know, like I think through the process, she could see that I wasn't really like into it. You know, I'm not very good at like poker face or hiding my feelings. Same. And so I'm sure along the way I was giving off signs like, I don't really want this job, you know? So she was like, you know what? You should read this. And I was like, okay, sure. Yeah. I love reading. And I love reading sort of like self-help or, you know, mindset books.
Yeah.
So that's how that book crossed my path.
I love that. I might actually reread it now that you put it back on my radar.
Yeah. Anytime I'm like feeling the urge to hustle, I just open it and read some of it because it's that hustle culture that I think hinders us a lot from just like making the right moves. You know?
Yes, I love that. Let's unpack that a little bit more. Now, I sound like my therapist.
Let's
now.
unpack.
Like, let's unpack what you mean by that.
Yeah.
Because it's true. And I actually see my autopilot is I go into that hustle.
Same.
And like, I actually get a lot done, but it's not what serves the business like for longevity and even for my mental health.
It's like you mentally become a psycho again.
Yeah.
Like I become a psycho and I'm pushing to make results and things happen and they're probably not even the right thing.
Yes.
So then I just read the book a little bit and I'm like, just relax, girl. Like
it's true.
And then things happen every time, you know? Literally this happened to me yesterday. I was feeling very stressed about the future.
Yeah.
And then I got 3 calls in a row yesterday and I was like, okay.
Yeah.
It's all going in the right direction.
It's true.
You know? But I had to calm myself down from like talk myself off that list.
Which is a skill set actually.
Yeah.
To be able, because it's so easy to be, you know, especially in like the worlds that we're in, like we got compensated for like getting shit done with a very results. Exactly. And like business doesn't work. Instant results. Exactly. And it doesn't work like that when you have your own business. If anything, it's probably energetically not giving the abundance and like positive vibes it needs. I know that sounds so corny, but I believe in all that.
Yeah, no, I agree.
Yeah.
And also I think what we see, like these overnight successes, first of all, there's no such thing. You know that.
Yeah.
Like just because you're hearing about it now doesn't mean that this person hasn't been like working towards this thing for however long behind the scenes.
Yeah.
But like, it's like the media. We only report what's exciting.
Yes.
Nobody is, I mean, on your podcast, you're talking about the drudgery of like being an entrepreneur, but nobody's publicly be talking about like, today we, disappointed a customer or whatever the downsides are, or like maybe you won't make payroll this month or something, like nobody wants to talk about that. Everybody just wants to hear about the success. So yeah, of course it seems like we all have to have these results right away, but that's not reality.
It's true. And so many of the people we see, it's like, it was 8 years in the making. Like, and that actually calms me down. Sometimes I'm like, we're like 2.5 years in. Like, we have years to go. And
we're on the same time frame.
Yeah, we are.
We're on the same time frame. I tell myself that all the time. I see other people doing things that I aspire to do one day, but they've been doing it so much longer than me.
Yes.
I'm just getting started. And like, I also think not that we should sit down and celebrate every mediocre thing that we do, but I think we also maybe don't appreciate what we've done so far.
Yeah, totally.
And I'm not saying throw yourself a party every time, but like, it's okay to just be proud of like your accomplishments.
Yeah.
I don't think that's something I was raised to do either.
Same. Yeah.
It's okay to be proud of what you've done.
Yeah, it's true. And like, to have that gratitude. It's so interesting because I get this question a lot, like, with this podcast, like, I'm meeting incredible business women who have significantly larger businesses than mine. And they're like, how does that make you feel? And I was like, if anything, like, I know the behind the scenes, and I try my best to showcase it here, that they have years ahead of me. They've gone through so many struggles. Like, truly, with this podcast, every time we hit a roadblock, I have a story in my brain. Oh yeah, this one person went through it, and this is how she overcame it.
So
and
it's like therapy for you too.
It's total therapy. Yeah. And I threw an event like last year, and I remember a few women pulled me aside. They're like, "How's Bia going?" And they have significantly larger businesses. They're like, "You know what, Yasmin? Like, enjoy it. You're in the best time of the business." And like, I needed to hear that at that moment.
What does that mean? Tell me. Because
like,
I feel like
things get, it's so beautiful to have a larger business, but like, things get more complicated. Like, you are in the fun part of like still understanding they still understand the clients, but like the earliness, you're still in it.
You're still feeling the growth and like sort of hands-on driving the growth.
Yes. And it's less of a corporate, if you're $100 million business, it's run completely different. Like, we're talking about employees at like a 3-person.
Yes.
I can't even imagine at this stage running like a larger business.
I know. I'm like, I don't want to. It's people management is the hardest part. And I've heard many CEO, everybody says this. People management is the hardest part. And especially for independent people who are just used to doing everything themselves, I've really had to work on that skill set because I don't have it, know?
Interesting. Yeah, totally.
And I don't know that I want it. I'm not sure where this business is going. I don't know that like a huge corporation is, I don't know. But all I know is people managing is hard.
Yeah. And when you know that early on, like, people bring in, if you ever needed to bring in someone to manage, like we had someone on the podcast, she's a founder of Ring Concierge. She's like, the first hire I did was like HR, and people are like, why?
Yeah.
She's like, I am not good at managing people. Yeah. They're like, are you okay? Like, it's such a weird hire, but she made that move. And, she said it was one of the best things I ever did.
I think so. I think you need to like know your own strengths, and then everybody else you hire should fill in all those gaps.
Yeah, that's true.
And
that takes time to like, I'm reevaluating that now. Like, where do I need the support? What am I not good in?
Yeah.
Who can I bring in that's significantly better at that?
100%.
Because there's only so much I can think about and do.
That's another way that you've been able to put your ego aside, and be like, I am not good at this thing. And guess what? There's somebody else out there who is, and who actually likes doing this thing.
True.
Yeah. So I think ego is like a big roadblock to like successful entrepreneurs. Like, you have to let go of so much in order for your business to evolve. And people struggle with that. It's like your baby. It's like your child.
I know. And then at each different level, you have to still unwind so much stuff. It's like
you're
growing with the business. So we were talking about this before we started recording, like, you're always uncomfortable. I'm
always.
Like, man, I got this, but now it's like this whole other level.
This whole other thing. But I recently read this book called 10X is Easier Than 2X.
Drew.
Have you read that?
I think Drew interviewed someone, but tell me, I heard.
The basic premise of the book is that for every leap you make, you've got to shed 80% of what you're doing now.
I love that. Yeah.
To focus on the 20% that's going to get you or your business to the next level. And that requires shedding sometimes people, your daily habits, like whoever that new person is.
Yeah.
So like say like you had to do it when you decided to become a podcast host. There are a lot of things that you could not do anymore, and or you know, a lot of mentalities that maybe you had to shed, like, and it's difficult, but it's also easier because not everybody's pursuing that thing. So there's less competition, if that makes sense.
Totally.
Yeah.
Totally. And you can actually 10x it. Like the same amount of work goes into it, but
That's
it's like
exactly it.
It's like how you
it's like your energy again, like it's all going towards that 20%.
Yeah.
And you've
so
shed
true.
or outsourced that 80%. That's not serving this new thing.
Okay.
You know?
I think I'm going to read that book too.
It's really
I need
amazing.
a shedding. I mean, I can feel like I'm ready to shed for the next level.
Yeah.
And I would love, that's amazing.
It's such a good book. And it really, it's very concise. It like just is like, here's what you do. And you're like, okay.
Amazing.
Okay.
Oh, I'm excited.
Yeah.
You know, one thing I'm curious about, and I know we're coming up on time, is, you know, you mentioned when you were doing the interior design jobs in the beginning, you're like, oh, I'm just kind of doing this for fun. And this is going to be my last project. This is going to be my last project. There's so much self-doubt that goes into that. And I'm sure you're thinking, you know, I didn't go to like interior design school.
All day, every day.
So how did you kind of, I mean, you've proven this throughout your career, but again, for another time, like how do you not let that stop you from building, like you have like a proper interior design business now. So how did you not let that get in the way?
I think it was partially the people I surrounded myself with. So in the beginning, I knew that if I wanted to do bigger jobs, I needed to do drawings, like AutoCAD drawings.
Okay.
I am not going back to school to do it, nor did it make business sense to me to sit at a computer every day for 4 or 5 hours. It's time consuming, right? That's not the best use of my time if I have a creative vision. So I hired somebody to do it. Okay. And that person, we were having this conversation because that person obviously went to school, and we were having this conversation about decorator versus designer, because there's this big debate in the industry about who can call themselves a designer versus decorator, you know? So old school interior designers believe that you shouldn't be able to call yourself a designer unless you went to school. I don't think the new guard thinks that at all. And I've made enough friends in the business now who've come from all kinds of different industries to know that that's true. Like my friend who I hired to help me with the drawings was like, well, do you design spaces? And I was like, yes, I do. And she's like, then you're an interior designer. Okay. And I was like, you are right. We're getting very caught up in titles. I think people get, it's ego. Yes, we're titles. Back to the ego question, right? Like if I was waiting for someone else with an ego to give me permission to do something, where would I be today?
It's true.
Nowhere, you know? So you can't let other people's ego or fears or judgments or whatever stop you. It's that same mentality, no ego, and you just have to be brave and like act.
And I love that, like having the right bubble around you. And
you have to.
If you don't have the right friends, and I mean, I've now kind of curated my own network.
You 10x'd.
Yeah, now I'm ready for the next 10x. Yeah. But also like listening to podcasts, YouTube, like there's so many things you can do just to make sure your mindset is right and like get inspired by other people. But I love, like I'm so protective of my network and my energy. Yeah. Because it just makes such a difference.
And even your feed, I unfollowed, blocked, mute, whatever. Like, I don't care. If it's in my view, it's affecting my brain. You know what I mean? So even the news, like sometimes you have to step back because it really has the power to like change how you go about your day. And you have to sort of like filter everything. Yeah. Censor it.
Totally.
You know?
It's so true. Protect your mindset.
Yes.
So I'm curious about this. What's the biggest fear you still have that you are looking to conquer for yourself still?
So I'm still working on my relationship with money. Like it's a big thing for me. My value has always been so tied to like how much money I make.
Are we the same person?
I think we're the same person. Well, I was a financial services attorney. So I think that there's a lot, and it starts with how you're raised and your beliefs about money. And for us, the amount of money you make is always tied to your value. And I'm really working so hard to separate myself from that because we're doing just fine. Yeah. You know, and it's not a measure of your value. Like how much money you make has nothing to do with like who you are, what you're providing it to the world. So I'm working on that.
How are you working on that?
I don't know. I don't, there's no specific strategy except to like,
I guess awareness is number one. And that was interesting for me.
Yes.
Like I was like, oh, I didn't know so much my identity was tied to money. Like
it is.
Yeah.
And again, it's that filter. I've cut off a lot of like even accounts that I follow on my Instagram that have to do with anything material or people in my life who are so focused on material acquisition. It's that's how I've been working on it, is limiting my interactions with that kind of narrative.
It's true.
Yeah. That's the only way, because otherwise I can get very caught up in it.
Yeah.
Versus just focusing on like what I'm putting out there to help people.
Yes.
You know?
Ugh. I love that.
You have to cut it all off. For people like us, you just can't even look at it or listen to it.
I know. You know? I know. It's true. But it's so interesting. Like starting a business, it just really uncovers so much about you. Like I had no idea that I was so tied to money and how my whole life feels like I support myself and I make a ton of money. And I was like, wow, my value was so tight. And even when the business is doing well, like we were talking about this, we've both decided to like reinvest the money back in the business. Like we're not seeing that money. So it's just this interesting relationship that I'm still like learning and also unpacking. But it's fascinating.
I really want to get to the point one day where I just like don't care. I don't know if that's possible. Well, I don't know. I would like to get to a point where money is not even a thing. Like a topic of conversation. It doesn't have to do with how much I have. It's more my mentality adjusting. Like my goal is to get to a place where I'm like, it doesn't matter. I don't know if that's realistic.
Well, we're both in the process. We'll see. We'll share.
I'll check in.
I know.
I'll check in.
We're doing all the work.
Exactly.
I love it. Well, Hema, I love this conversation. I feel like we could have talked for so long, but thank you for being here, being just such an open book.
Thanks
I know you're
for having
inspiring
me.
so many. So thank you.
Thank you.